Hello and welcome to Ask a NaviGuide, part of the Abundant Aging podcast series. I'm Ashley, your host, and on this show, we discuss topics in aging and family caregiving that can be stressful to work through, and we do this with tips and advice from the United Church Homes team of NaviGuides. Our NaviGuides have years of experience helping families age abundantly, and we hope that we share on this show will be information that will help you age abundantly also. Today, we have our NaviGuide Kimberly with us, who will help us understand the stages of Alzheimer's. Please remember the opinions shared in this podcast are those of our amazing NaviGuides and are not meant to convey or take the place of clinical, legal, or other professional advice. So hi, Kimberly.
Hi, Ashley. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. So why don't we start off a little bit today of you telling me about your background and what makes you so knowledgeable in this subject or why it's important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a very proud advocate for Alzheimer's and individuals who are diagnosed with dementia, Alzheimer's, and their caregivers. It means a lot to me. My journey started out, I had some rough times during my teenage years, and I was placed in girls' homes. And back in those days, not all of them were regulated. Stuff happened, isolation. I missed my family. There was just a lot of trauma unwinding and stuff. Well, when I turned 16, I was looking for my first job after I got out, and I was hired as the activities assistant at a local nursing home. And when I first got hired, I didn't know what that was. I just knew it paid, this much more than this hostess job. So I graciously accepted, and they placed me in the memory care unit. And it was in that unit that, I guess I began to really find myself and realize, wow, even though we couldn't be any more opposite age realms, these people were a lot more relatable to me than most anybody my age. And I don't know, just a forever bond, just amazing season, and forever advocate was born in those memory care units.
That's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that story. It's really interesting. So today we're talking about the stages of dementia. So my first question is not really about that at all, about the stages, but more about the progression. So let's say you just got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. How quickly does the disease typically progress?
Yeah. So according to ALZ.org, which is the Alzheimer's Association, once you receive a diagnosis, it can go as quickly as anywhere from 4 to 8 years or as long as 20 years. It just depends on the individual because everybody's different, different genetics, backgrounds, different factors going on with the progression of this disease. So it just depends.
Okay, that makes sense. So the stages, how do you typically break it down? Is it just early, mid, and late, or are there more factors involved in that?
Yeah, for the most part, most people refer to them as early, middle, and late stages. I know when I was 16, I overheard some talk in the nursing home that there's only 7 stages. As time has progressed, the most I've heard is early, middle, and late stages of Alzheimer's.
Okay, so let's talk about the early stages. What are some of the symptoms or behaviors that one might experience in that early stage?
Yes. So in the early stages of Alzheimer's disease, you're going to experience a lot of interruptions and decline in recently learned information. Forgetting phone numbers, frequently forgetting doctor's appointments you've made. You can still function to a level of independence, but it's not as well as it once was prior to the Alzheimer's diagnosis. You can still remember how to drive a car, but you don't know, you're struggling to remember where you're going. Just everyday forgetfulness that's impacting your daily function of living.
So in that early stage, what part of the brain is typically affected first?
I know that from educational videos that I watched during some advocacy training, they broke it down into a really good educational visual, I guess. Let's say that this is the neuron, a neuron in your brain, and this shield wall over it that is called the myelin sheath. And the way Alzheimer's works is there are two biomarkers that are characteristics of Alzheimer's disease, and they're plaques and tangles. They destroy the shield wall, leaving that neuron exposed. And it deteriorates, unfortunately, very slowly sometimes.
So then it just moves around to different parts of your brain, correct? It's just kind of getting anything it can grab.
Yeah, it mainly affects memory. The genesis start well before even the first symptom of Alzheimer's disease, but it's in the region that affects memory.
Gotcha. So if we think about the early stage and we move to the moderate stage, what sort of symptoms do we see when it progresses along to that stage?
Okay, yeah. So that towards the more middle stages, you're going to see a lot more forgetfulness of past information. And according to alz.org, this is the season or the stage that can last typically the longest. People start to forget their loved ones, their own history, not even facial. They don't recognize the person coming to visit them. You're going to experience a lot more mood swings, personality changes. It's just a brutal, very sad reality.
Yeah, that's probably the one that maybe our listeners and caregivers have experienced most often. So how do we get then from there to the advanced stage? What are the different symptoms at this point?
Yeah, so as we mentioned, it's a very slow decline that takes place with the breaking down of those shield walls that protect your neurons and cognitive abilities. It's just a slow cognitive decline all the way. And just so many changes are happening. By the time you get to the final stages of this disease, you've lost, unfortunately, your ability to even swallow. From my experience, I remember seeing so many of my residents just laying there. They would have to be physically carried into their wheelchair, pushed down to the activities, and there would be almost no response, those cues to respond to what's in front of them. If it's a bingo game or if it's an ice cream social, they're just sitting there. And so it's a slow decline, very slow.
Right. And it's very sad. It's very sad to see. So are there different ways, or to your knowledge, or I imagine medication does this too, but just slowing down that process so that you don't get to the advanced stages as quickly as, maybe you would without anything?
Yeah, it's wide known that there is no prevention, treatment, or cure for Alzheimer's disease, but there are medications that have been proven to help with the symptoms, and they could slow some of the progression. It just depends back on the individual, their personal characteristics, biological factors. Please don't make me say the name of that medication that just got FDA approval, because I cannot pronounce it. It starts with an L.
Okay. We can Google it. That's what Google's for. All right. Good deal. So are there any resources or anything about the stages that maybe we could provide our listeners with that you're familiar with?
Yeah, the biggest one that I advocate for is to find support. Don't try to walk this journey alone. Reach out. The Alzheimer's Association has a 24/7 helpline to help you, your loved ones, your caregivers. They can put you in touch with not only local resources in your community that offer home and community-based services, but they have access to support groups where you can go and actually physically sit with other families and individuals going through the same season you're in. Your voice matters, and that's what should be heard the most, not anybody else making decisions for you.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great resource. And it's also, they can't do as well of a job that they do if we didn't use them, right? If people didn't reach out and say, this is my situation, this is how I need help, it's only going to help them help more people by hearing everyone's story. So thanks for sharing that, Kimberly. And thank you so much for being with us today. And that wraps up our episode on the stages of dementia. So thank you for listening to this episode of Ask a NaviGuide, part of the Abundant Aging podcast series brought to you by United Church Homes. If you like this show, please like, share, and subscribe so we can bring you more episodes like this. You can find us at abundantagingpodcast.com, and you can leave feedback, questions, ideas for future episodes. And you can find out more information on the NaviGuide program by visiting uchnaviguide.org, and more about United Church Home's memory care program, Comfort Matters, at unitedchurchhomes.org. We'll see you next time.